Indeed, the question of Cain's wife has been a source of intrigue long before the infamous Scopes monkey trial of 1925. However, it was during that trial, which essentially revolved around the teaching of evolution in science classrooms, that Clarence Darrow cleverly used the query about Cain's spouse to stump William Jennings Bryan, causing a stir and casting doubt on the ability of Christians to defend biblical teachings. But here's the thing. Before we proceed, could I kindly ask our viewers to consider subscribing to our channel for more insightful content? Your support means a lot to us and helps us grow. Thank you for your support. The identity of Cain's wife isn't exactly rocket science. It's not some impenetrable mystery. Rather, it's more of an uncomfortable topic for many Christians to broach. It's like that awkward moment at a family gathering when someone brings up a touchy subject and everyone shuffles their feet uncomfortably. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 17, it's mentioned, Cain knew his wife and she conceived. Now, considering at that point only Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel are explicitly mentioned in the biblical narrative, it's natural to wonder where Cain's wife came from. One perspective looks at Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to 28, where God creates humanity, stating, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness," and then contrasts it with Genesis chapter 2, which focuses on God creating Adam and Eve, seen as the chosen line. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, God says, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." According to this view, Cain's wife could have been one of the people created in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to 28, or their descendants. Another viewpoint suggests theistic evolution, where humanity evolves over time. In this perspective, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to 28 could be seen as the process of human evolution guided by God, and Adam and Eve are chosen as the starting point of God's special relationship with humanity. In this view, Genesis chapter 2, verse 21 to 22, where God creates Eve from Adam's rib, could symbolize a special selection for Adam's lineage. In this view, Cain's wife could have been from the broader population that evolved alongside Adam and Eve's lineage. There's also the serpent seed interpretation, which sees Cain and/or his wife as descendants of Satan, offering a more symbolic understanding. This interpretation is based on Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, where God says to the serpent, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." Additionally, some interpret that just as God created Eve for Adam, he might have also created wives for the first generation of Adam and Eve's descendants. While not explicitly stated in the Bible, this interpretation suggests that God ensured companionship and continuation of the human race from the outset. All of these interpretations contort unnecessarily when there is a much simpler explanation. In Genesis chapter 5, verse 4 to 5, it's stated that Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel, followed by another son, Seth, as well as other sons and daughters after Adam reached 130 years old. This passage also highlights that Adam lived a total of 930 years before his passing. The timeline between Abel's death and Cain's marriage and settlement isn't specified in the Bible. Considering Adam and Eve's offspring, including Cain and Abel, could have been well into adulthood, the tragic event might have occurred when they were in their 50s or 60s, shortly before Adam's 130th year. Genesis chapter 4, verse 25 recounts the birth of Seth, who Eve regarded as a replacement for Abel, saying, "God has appointed for me another child instead of Abel, for Cain slew him." Additionally, ancient Jewish texts like the Book of Jubilees and the works of Josephus suggest that Adam and Eve spent 7 years in Eden and that their first sons were born between years 64 and 77, 7 years apart. Josephus also notes the tradition that Adam had 33 sons and 23 daughters. According to Hebrew and Ethiopic theology, female ancestry wasn't typically recorded. Hence, the daughters Adam had before Seth aren't named. Scripture simply acknowledges their existence. In Numbers chapter 1 verse 2, during the first census, God instructed Moses to count only males. Take a census of all the congregation of the people of Israel, by clans, by fathers' houses, according to the number of names, every male, head by head. During ancient times, it was not uncommon for people to marry their siblings. For instance, Abraham referred to Sarah as his sister in Genesis chapter 20 verse 12. Indeed, she is truly my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. Adam and Eve had daughters, and it is logical to assume that Cain married one of his sisters, as did other male descendants of Adam and Eve, who likely married either their sisters or female cousins. Initially, the gene pool created by Adam and Eve was perfect. However, after the fall, human imperfection began to manifest, leading to weaker genetic traits. God addressed this issue in Leviticus 18 verse 9, prohibiting marriage with close relatives. The nakedness of your sister, the daughter of your father, or the daughter of your mother, whether born at home or elsewhere, their nakedness you shall not uncover. So, where did Cain's wife come from? Cain's wife was most likely his biological sister. In the early generations of humanity, intermarriage among siblings or close relatives would have been necessary due to the limited number of people. The first generation had no other option but to marry within their family. The second generation could have intermarried with siblings, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, or cousins, which the Bible does not consider incestuous. By the third generation, the human population would have grown enough to allow for less closely related marriages. While the idea of Cain marrying his sister may seem uncomfortable to modern sensibilities, if we interpret the Genesis creation account literally, it was a practical necessity given the circumstances of early human existence. Additionally, at that time, there would have been no significant genetic risk associated with close intermarriage, as the human genetic code had not yet been corrupted.